So again, welcome as you are joining us. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers today, but also folks who are volunteering their time as either facilitators or experts in their own right. And my name is Michelle Hoare. I am the project director for Hey Neighbour Collective, and we are going to dive right in because we've got such a busy agenda. So, welcome today to the sixth Housing That Connects Us webinar that Hey Neighbour Collective has done in the last few years. It's kind of a little sub-brand, I guess, if you like, that really has worked well for us in kind of containing some of these ideas around how we can design housing differently, but also manage and program it differently in ways that help to connect us with each other as neighbors, but also connect us into our communities better for all sorts of benefits, both personal and societal. So this one is focused on the benefits of being what we call an enabling host. Ryan, if you can forward the slides, please. I'll just say next. So to start with, I am here in Vancouver, which is also, of course, the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And we would love to know what territories you are joining us from. So please do go ahead and share that in the chat. Next. So we have to have Ryan do the slides for me because I'm so vastly incompetent at sharing in webinars. I get weirdly nervous and I just mess everything up. So thanks, Ryan. As I said, Housing That Connects Us is kind of the theme of the webinars that we do. And the context really is how we can connect the worlds of housing, social well-being, and resilience and look at all of this together. Next. We are joined in this three-part series that we're doing this spring
Yeah, I
by
mean,
United Way of
sorry.
BC and the United Way of BC's Provincial Seniors Housing Working Group. So Laura Katawaki is here from United Way, and she works with, a really robust and engaged working group of seniors that are concerned about housing and homelessness issues across this province. And that working group is part of the larger community-based Senior Services Leadership Council. So this is a group that United Way has, supported to kind of come together and work for a number of years now. And we're really happy to have them as part of this webinar series. Next. So, many of you will have heard me talk about the origin of Hey Neighbor, but when I looked at the registration, there were many, many new names. So I'll just do a little background about us. Hey Neighbor actually started in 2018, 2019 as a pilot project at the City of Vancouver. So there was a wonderful social planner there named Kelty Craig, who is actually with us today as one of our facilitators. And she was looking at trends around densification, but also around loneliness and social isolation, and wanted to look at ways of making sure that our dense residential contexts were also going to be kind of health promoting and socially connected. And that wasn't necessarily the case in a lot of apartments and condos. Because we're not really thinking about it as holistically and proactively as we need to all the time. So she devised a really simple but impactful pilot program with in two buildings with two different market rental housing operators, and hired Luna, the lovely person in this middle photo, doing this. And Luna had a lot of community development experience, and Luna worked with those building managers to find residents that were willing to step forward to be volunteers to put on events and activities with and for their neighbors. So the whole pilot ran 12 months, probably 6 months, 7 months of like actual resident activities. But there was enough promise in it, so both benefits for residents, but also kind of benefits for the landlords, that the city thought, this should continue, but they didn't really want to be the entity to scale it. So there were a number of us on an advisory committee at that time, and we said, can we see what we can make of this idea? And so we found some initial funding. We found a new home at the SFU Center for Dialogue. Ryan, next slide, please. And in 2019, we created a new organization called the Hey Neighbor Collective, or an initiative, I should say. So it's a collective impact initiative housed at the SFU Center for Dialogue, and it brings together organizations from across many, many different sectors. So housing providers, NGOs, policymakers, local governments, regional governments, whatnot, researchers, and health sector folks, particularly public health. And the vision that we are all working towards long term is a future where more of Canada's multi-unit housing communities are age-friendly, socially connected, neighborly, health promoting, and resilient. Next. So, how do we do our work? The first thing that the Hey Neighbor Collective is focused on is working with what we call demonstration partners to help them scale at age-friendly community building programs. And when we say age-friendly, we mean across the life course. So many of our partners do work in contexts where there's a high percentage of older adults or even seniors only buildings, but lots of our partners also work in buildings with very mixed populations in terms of age and demographics. We support these partners and the whole collective impact project with research and learning and evaluation. We share stories and knowledge. So we facilitate peer learning amongst partners, but also storytelling. And then we do a lot around housing industry and cross-sectoral policy engagement. So we're continually bringing together all the different sectors that are part of our collective to talk about housing that connects us and how we do that. And some of our foundational principles are housing as a human right, equity, relationships and trust building. That's really fundamental to all this work. Asset-based community development, so really working with residents. This is like an empowerment and capacity building model, not a service model. We want to look at addressing root causes and, of course, interdisciplinary multi-sector collaboration. Next. I won't go into our theory of change too deeply. You can find it online if you're a theory of change nerd. But some of the, high level things that we see supporting our long-term vision are, of course, engaged, safe, and empowered residents, proactive housing operators, improved housing design, and supportive policy. And today we're going to look quite a lot at proactive housing operators, or what we call enabling hosts. Next. So I probably don't need to tell many of you why we need to care about social connectedness and particularly neighborly social connectedness, why we need to care about loneliness and social isolation. But basically, chronic loneliness and social isolation are as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And conversely, social connectedness has immense both personal and societal benefits. And, since 2017 and earlier, we have been starting to kind of notice trends around loneliness. So well before the pandemic. But of course, the pandemic really boosted that awareness of the importance of social connectedness. On the West Coast, the heat dome really exposed the role of neighborly social connections in our safety, in our ability to withstand climate impacts. We are looking at, issues around seniors' homelessness. So all of these issues of housing and homelessness crises, climate, social connection, they're all kind of coming together in this very complex mix. Next. And we really see social connection as a multi-solver and housing as a really great context within which to work on social connection. So in addition to housing being a human right, it's also a core social determinant of health, and our social connections and our built environments are also. These are just a few different, social determinant of health infographics about what makes us healthy. The circle parts are what we're going to talk really specifically about today, but you'll probably hear things that actually touch on all sorts of different social determinants of health. Next. The World Health Organization is getting really quite focused on social connection and how important it is. And in fact, they've even said that if we leave it unaddressed, it will continue to cost society billions in terms of healthcare, education, and employment. So not a small issue, actually a very, very serious one. And I think we're starting to grasp that, but Canada still does not have a strategy around loneliness or social connectedness. So lots of work to do on the Canadian policy front and public health recognition front. Next. So back in 2019, when we launched this, people in public health, understood what we were trying to do and the importance and seriousness of it. But lots of other people thought, oh, this is a sweet project. It's kind of a cute, nice to have. But in 2026, what we've really come to see is that neighborly social connectedness saves lives, and it creates resilience to all kinds of challenges, whether it's climate change, health, pandemics, aging, a kind of a super age society that we're entering. So there's a lot that we can do, and the mindset around this work has really shifted quite significantly. Next. So some of you who are here probably came to our last webinar in March, which United Way was also a sponsor or co-host of. And we had Stacy Barter from Hey Neighbour, but also the Connect and Prepare program, Claudine Matlow from West End Seniors Network, and Jenny Conkin from Holway House presenting. It was an excellent webinar. I really encourage you to watch the video if you didn't attend. And luckily for you, we have Stacy, Jenny, and Claudine's colleague Miriam here today as experts in the breakout room, so in different ones. So you may, if you're lucky, get to chat with them or one of the other amazing people. Next. But today, oh, whoa, something happened to those slides. I apologize, all our speakers, for, I don't know if everybody else has seen that, but your heads are a little wonky. So we have some amazing speakers today. I won't do full bios because you can read those online, but we have Dr. Catherine Donnelly from Queen's University. She's going to speak to us about the OASIS program. We have Sherry Crane and Jamie Hewitt from Brightside. They're going to talk to us about their experience as enabling hosts. We have Catherine Bruner from the Nork Innovation Center. She'll tell us about all their vast kind of programs. And we have Rebecca Robles from New Chelsea Society, so also an enabling host. So I know that's going to be a rich conversation. Next. So our agenda, I am 3 minutes over, so we're going to get rolling. So we will go into some rapid fire presentations by the crew that I just introduced. I'll do a quick facilitated panel discussion with some of my own questions. We'll take a few audience Q&A questions. Then we will take a 5-minute stretch and water break. And that's for those of you who cannot take the full 2 hours to be with us or just really wanted to kind of listen in. And then at 12:20, for those of you who are ready to dive deep and also share what you're doing, we will go into facilitated breakout rooms. So in each of those breakout rooms, we have a facilitator and 2 experts joining you. So it'll be a really rich conversation, an opportunity to share what you're doing, but also to ask further questions about this kind of work. And then we will close. Next. And this is just a brief thank you to all of those experts and facilitators. And we can make introductions later if need be. But for now, let's stop sharing these slides, Ryan, and we'll launch right into our first presenter, who is Catherine Donnelly. Catherine, welcome.
Making sure that everyone can see that.
Yes, but you'll need to put it in full presenter mode.
Perfect.
There we go. Looks great. Okay,
Well,
I'm going to shut myself up.
I've got strict orders to keep it under 7, and I'm pinched, but I will do my best. And I've got a QR code for people to take some time away. So, hello everybody, Catherine Donnelly from Queen's University. So lovely to join you from across the country here. I'm talking about the OASIS program, and some of you may have heard about the OASIS program. I'll just do a quick overview because what I'm really here to do is share with you the benefits from the enabling host perspective too, and a study we just completed. So the OASIS program is a program that's run in a naturally occurring retirement community. It was developed in Kingston here by older people coming together and deciding that this is what they needed to do, is connect in the building that they lived in. So again, it's co-designed with and for older people to address important determinants of healthy aging, but really was identified to address loneliness and isolation. And it's in collaboration with housing of all sorts, public, not-for-profit, private, and it's partnerships with the housing partners and our community partners, for example, Wesson and in Vancouver, as well as Collingwood Neighborhood House, who help support run the programs in Vancouver. So it has three pillars, and the secret sauce we call the Oasis Coordinator. So again, all of the programs are run in communal groups. So it's eating together, doing physical activity and movement together, and coming together, socially connecting in common space where people are living. And it's supported by an Oasis coordinator. And the coordinator is hired by a local community support agency. So again, this idea of being able to leverage regional expertise and to be able to also bring in community other partners to provide supports in different ways too, if that's what older people have identified. I'm not going to spend much time here at all, just to say to everybody that this has been running for 17 years now. So it started in 2009, and we've been expanding with supports of multiple different funders over those last 17 years. And the original still maintains its original funding source through our health system. And just a little snapshot. So there's actually now 24 sites, and I should say 5 sites in Vancouver. And so we work with 3 different housing partners in Vancouver. We work with Brightside. It's awesome to see Sherry. We work with the City of Kingston, or sorry, that is me, City of Vancouver, 2 sites. And then also a new site with the Bloom Group. So again, it's still continuing to expand and grow in amazing ways. Mutual benefit from lots of different perspective. And we've been doing 7 years now of research to explore like what is the benefit and mutual benefit of the Oasis program. And I'm going to shift very quickly into what I'm here to talk to you about, but just wanted to have you look at the perspective of from all the different partners that we work with. And we've been looking and researching at the different benefits from all of these different pillars. But I know I'm here just very quickly, and I don't want to hog up the time because I know we've got lots of other folk. I put a QR code here because this paper is hot off the press. And what we had been hearing the whole time that we had started for over a decade now is that there's a lot of benefit to the housing partners. And we kept hearing it anecdotally, and we thought to ourselves, we really need to formally reach out and conduct a formal qualitative study to listen to what those experiences are. So I'll just leave it here. But if you click on this, it takes you to the PDF of the paper. And so I will now turn over. So we found 4 main themes, and Michelle, I am keeping an eye on the clock so I don't go over. 4 main themes, and I'll let you read some of these quotes, but if you do look at the paper, you can read it in more detail. So the first was looking at the Oasis program, was looking at building connections, and people, the landlord, the housing partner saw that as helping to promote health. So they saw, for instance, members coming together, creating WhatsApp groups, checking in on each other. They saw that they would have different health checks, for instance, and just as essentially seeing health change through these connections, which, all of the literature on loneliness shows as well. So it was like, it was doing and doing with folk that they really saw bringing people together. The next one is thinking about transforming the building. So comments like, it's not a ghost town anymore. There's a buzz in the building. So this idea that they could really see transformation, and you'll see that quote at the top, this idea that they didn't hear as many grumbling. So not hearing from people was as much as hearing the buzz too, from a landlord partner perspective. This idea that recognizing the coordinator as the secret sauce. So seeing this person coming into the building as instrumental in terms of creating the program, but also sustaining the program and making people feel welcome across all different types of folk in the building, and being that neutral glue. The last thing I'll just talk a little bit about is facilitators and challenges. So again, thinking about facilitators being partly that secret sauce, but I just also want to talk about some of the challenges that some of the housing partners mentioned as well. So just the time it does take to actually build community. So having a coordinator there is important, but also just giving time for people to come together and make those connections can take some time. thinking about things like building trust and commitment, what I talk about, which I spoke about, but also initial concerns because many buildings may or may not have social committees. So just thinking about how you create and work with existing social committees in buildings as well. The other thing I was going to mention just briefly in terms of some questions that some housing partners had, depending on how the structure was security. So if other folk were coming from outside the building, just wanting to make sure security was an issue if people didn't live in the building but were still being welcomed into the program. I know time is short, but I will leave it there, other than to say that we heard from multiple different perspectives. So these were housing partners that were from social housing, from co-ops, from condominiums, so a wide span of different housing partners too. So we heard consistent messaging again across these four themes. Thanks, Michelle. I'll hand it over to you.
Catherine, that's amazing. I know that 7 minutes is a real challenge for
It is.
programs that have been happening for 17 years. So you did an amazing job, and we can flesh it out a bit with questions ongoing. So, Tara, am I right that we have Catherine Bruner up next? Is
Yeah,
that correct? Yeah, all right. Catherine, off you go.
thank you. So I work for the Nork Innovation Center, which is an implementation and learning hub based at the University Health Network, UHN, Canada's largest research hospital. Our center launched in 2023 with a mandate to work in genuine partnership with older adults, housing providers, and care delivery partners to implement an integrated health and social care model to support aging in place. Next slide, please. So our work focuses on NORC buildings or naturally occurring retirement communities, because from a health system perspective, there's an opportunity to leverage the density of older adults living in NORCs. In Toronto, there are 2,260 NORC buildings, and over 1/3 of older adults live in high rises. This data comes from UHN's NORC registry for Ontario, and we are currently working on a national registry to map NORCs across the country. In addition to research, design, and policy work, we are also actively piloting our integrated health and social care model in 30 buildings across the Greater Toronto Area. And similar to Oasis, we're also working with a mixture of different building types, from condominiums to rental apartments to housing cooperatives and social housing, and also working in a mixture of different types of neighborhoods to better inform the design of our model. Next, please. So for our model, and I think this slide has actually gone one further, so maybe just going one back if that's possible. Thank you. So our model has three interconnected core elements, which I'll detail over the next few slides, but they are local leadership to build capacity and sustainability, on-site support to link residents to services and to coordinate programs for health and well-being, and integrated health and social care to strengthen aging in place. And these three core elements are implemented with design principles that are relationship-centered, community-led, adaptable to local contexts, and that seek to leverage and complement existing resources in the healthcare system. Next slide. So the strength of our model, or maybe our secret sauce, to use Catherine's language, is our one team approach. So similar, we have on-site staff called NORC Connectors, and they work with residents, a network of health and social care partners, and trusted service providers to ensure that supports for health promotion, prevention, and care are accessible. For individuals with more complex health needs, the NORC Connector can help with health system navigation, and they can also make one-on-one referrals. The nurse practitioner-led clinic helps to provide rapid assessments, care coordination, integrated care pathways, and plans with primary care providers. Next slide. And at the heart of our model are NORC ambassadors, which are trained residents who discover what's needed and wanted in their building to age in place. Local leadership helps to ensure that programming reflects what's needed for meaningful change, both at the building level and also at the system level. Ambassadors help to build social connections, they organize activities, they share resources, and they can connect with more isolated residents living in their buildings. They also support peer-to-peer networks of neighbors who can help with everyday tasks and community initiatives to help create a stronger sense of belonging and networks of mutual care. Next slide. So in working alongside NORC residents, our aim is not to simply better coordinate health and social care, it's to recognize community as co-creators of solutions that support health system transformation. And this resident quote really captures the value of this community-driven approach. And they said the strength of this NORC program is that it is driven from the bottom up. This is the best way to allow for different and new ideas to emerge. Next slide. So from the perspective of a building partner or an enabling host, there's three different requirements to host our program. So one is to provide access to common spaces for programming, to sign a memorandum of agreement to host the NORC program, and also a willingness to partner with third-party agencies that can provide programs and services in the building, and also to provide access to communication channels to engage and survey residents. And those are the basic requirements. Next slide. And then given the focus of today's webinar, again, thinking through from the perspective of the building provider, some of the benefits of hosting the NORC model. We've seen shifts in buildings with increased safety and belonging. And because NORC programs really support these networks of mutual care to form and strengthen, we've seen benefits in terms of increased capacity and resiliency in community. We've also seen increases in residents' sense of belonging and social connection, which, as Michelle discussed in the introduction today, is really significant, knowing that social isolation is connected to so many health risks. The presence of on-site health and social care services also helps to promote early detection and prevention. For example, NORC residents who have mobility issues can be connected to supports to reduce their falls risk. We've also seen that on-site connectors become a trusted neutral presence in the building, and that can support building partners by bridging residents to services in the formal healthcare system and by bringing supports right into the building where they might be needed. For example, this could be connection to resources to provide respite for caregivers. Similar to Oasis, we've also heard from building providers that this can really animate underused common areas in the building, with places like elevators and lobbies finally becoming vibrant places for social connection. We've also seen that ambassadors can be real facilitators for sharing information for resources that are nearby, local services, local programs that exist in their neighborhoods. And then the other thing that we've also seen is the community engagement that's done by ambassadors can help to increase the self-sufficiency of the residents in the building. For example, in one of our communities, NORC ambassadors heard that it was really challenging to get groceries from the parking area to the elevators in the building, and they worked with their property manager to leave behind a trolley for all residents to use. Next slide, please. And then in terms of thinking about some of our initial learnings on collaborations between health and housing partners, some of our learnings are really highlighting the importance of taking a collaborative and flexible approach. We aim to really bridge the needs of residents with the needs of housing providers, recognizing that all buildings and communities are unique. And we found that providing regular updates to building partners and being responsive to their feedback really helps to build awareness of the NORC program and to navigate emerging tensions that can help to sustain programs over time. Next slide. So in addition to the 30 sites that we work closely with in Toronto, in 2024, we also launched a suite of resources for older adults that are interested in starting their own Aging in Place initiative, including virtual monthly NORC talks and a step-by-step guide to help older adults start their own initiatives. And we also have a newsletter that folks can sign up for to follow along with our work and receive regular updates. And you can find information for all of that on our website. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I told you these guys were going to be good, and they are. You guys are doing an amazing job of very tight presentations. This is great. Tara, who do we have up next?
We have Jamie from Brightside up next.
All right, jump in, Jamie.
Just sharing my screen here, one moment. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yes, I feel like it's always a
Awesome.
small victory when slides go full
Oh
screen.
my gosh, I know. Thank you so
Congratulations,
much.
Jamie.
Okay, that's 30 seconds. Um, Thank you, Hey Neighbor Collective, for putting on today's webinar and for having me today. My name's Jamie. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with Brightside Community Homes Foundation. And today I'll be sharing a bit about what it looks like for Brightside as a housing provider to act as an enabling host for community engagement in our buildings, and also what we're learning around along the way. So I'd like to start off by just acknowledging that as a place-based organization, Brightside is privileged to provide housing in so-called Vancouver on the unceded and stolen traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Kwantlen, and Kakite nations. So for those of you who don't know, Brightside is a charitable nonprofit organization originally founded in 1952, and it provides affordable homes in an independent living model for folks who face barriers to market housing, including older adults, families, and people with disabilities. As you can see on the housing continuum image on the bottom, Brightside falls in the middle, sort of the non-market affordable housing, depending on what that is to people. And our community engagement partners. So community engagement at Brightside is not something we do alone. Finding partners and programs in the community that can come meet people where they're at in buildings has really been our main focus to bridge these supports to residents. So our work is made possible through these strong partnerships with community orgs who bring expertise, relationships, and programming directly into our buildings. And this slide shows some of the wonderful organizations we get to partner with and work with. So I'm going to take a few moments to just go through some of the Brightside buildings that have ongoing programs within them and show you what that looks like in practice with some of the partnerships you saw on the last slide. So as we've just heard from Oasis, I'll talk briefly to the program in our Brightside buildings. But as you all know, Oasis is a program for older adults, and it's built around the three core pillars of movement, healthy nutrition, and social connectedness. And it's meant to support participants and the residents in the building to age in place. What's really neat about this program is participants get to co-develop the program as well. So it's really catering to their wants and needs in terms of activities. It's delivered in two Brightside buildings. It's delivered bi-weekly, and the coordinator being the secret sauce, as Catherine mentioned, from Collingwood Neighborhood House. We are very grateful for the facilitation that comes into these programs. And sorry, next slide. Myself. Here are some photos shared from the program over time. And as you can see, these photos give a sense of how Oasis shows up, from people sharing meals together and cooking, introducing. Recently, we've brought in therapeutic gardening to one of our buildings, and they do trips out into the city. And just to note that the relationships that form here are just as important as the activities themselves. Next up, we have the TAPS program, that stands for the Therapeutic Activation Program for Seniors. So this is brought in by Little Mountain Neighborhood House into one of our Brightside buildings, which is ongoing on a bi-weekly basis. So TAPS is more of an adult day program that supports older adults through adapted recreation and leisure activities. What's neat about this program is it's open to our residents, but it's also open to older adults from the community, general public. And it's a good example of how community-based services, bringing in community-based services into housing can reduce isolation and create welcoming and inclusive spaces. So these are some wonderful photos that reflect the supportive environment that the TAPS program brings to the Brightside building it functions in. And bringing this kind of program directly into building really makes participation easier for a lot of folks. It helps reduce the barriers for older adults who might otherwise be isolated. And similar to Oasis, TAPS participants really help shape the activities they want to take part in. Moving on, in contrast to Oasis and TAPS, our partnership with Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House involves a wide range of different programs and workshops from social, educational, wellness focus, and food-based programs. So they really vary in format and frequency and are responsive to residents' interest, but also what is available funding-wise at that point in time. So here are some examples of the variety of what's offered from Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House, from tech support sessions to food hampers to board game cafes. These programs are also open to residents and, depending on the offering, open to public as well. So a nice way to bridge resident neighbors, but also neighbors in the community. Moving on, I will share lastly the Connect and Prepare program by Building Resilient Neighborhoods. This layout is focused on a 4-workshop program on emergency preparedness and community connection, and it's delivered as a progressive series over 6 to 8 weeks, with each session building on the last one. And the program intentionally brings people together to connect, but also focus on emergency preparedness while they're strengthening their relationships, but also working collaboratively. And we're in the midst of delivering a Connect and Prepare program at one of our buildings right now in collaboration with Building Resilient Neighborhoods, but as well as Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House. And these are some photos of the sessions thus far. And we're really seeing how emergency preparedness brings people together and builds relationships, but also works on their collective responsibility and resilience. And what are some of the observed benefits we're seeing? We've seen more engaged and socially connected residents and supported resident communities that can contribute to greater tenancy stability. We've also observed greater resident appreciation when housing moves beyond just the transactional landlord role to include a focus on well-being. And finally, strong community partner relationships really increase ours Brightside's capacity and resourcefulness when it comes to supporting residents. And then what we are learning along the way, something we're really seeing is programs that are ongoing and consistently facilitated create better conditions for residents to build relationships and feel comfortable participating over time. So something like the TAPS and Oasis program, which is ongoing versus just a one and done workshop. We're also knowing this work can't be done off the side of somebody's desk, a role, somebody in a housing operator organization. It's really helpful to have a full-time dedicated staff whose focus is on engagement. And also that partnerships are at the core to this work for us. They're the reason we're able to offer programming across so many of our buildings and making Brightside as resourceful as it is. And most importantly, big learning is that every building community is different from the physical space and the people who live in it. So just being flexible and adaptable when doing this work. And I think I'm over time. I apologize, but get to know us. Here are our links. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the rest of today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Jamie. You did a fantastic job, as each of our presenters have done, and as I know Rebecca will do next. So over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, all. First, I want to thank Hey Neighbor Collective for convening the series and for the work they're doing to strengthen the collaboration across the housing sector. My name is Rebecca Robles, and I've been over a year now working at New Chelsea Society as the Community Services Coordinator. For those who are not familiar with us, New Chelsea is a nonprofit housing provider rooted commitment to housing with heart since 1952. And we serve approximately 3,100 residents across 23 properties in Metro Vancouver. And we support seniors, families, mixed age communities. But regarding my role, I think it sits at the intersection of housing operations, resident engagement, and community partnerships. Next, please. So what is an enabling host? From my perspective, I believe that when we talk about being an enabling host, we are really recognizing that housing is more than a shelter. If the conditions are right, we are a platform that create connection, trust, and well-being that can grow. So being an enabling host doesn't mean just delivering a program, but it means creating the conditions for connection to happen safely, respectfully, and in alignment with the housing operations. Next, please. So what we support in buildings, so at New Chelsea, we support, what we support generally includes community engagement and social connection, safety and awareness initiatives that support aging in place, digital literacy and access, food security supports, and seasonal community gatherings. And I would like to recognize that most of this work is partner-led, with New Chelsea acting just as a coordinator and enabler, but that doesn't mean that we don't do things on our own. So we also host some activities that are not partner-led, like the summer barbecues, the garden clubs, holiday dinners, and lunches distribution. Next, please. But what all of this matters to New Chelsea? So it matters because we see resident connections not as just an add-on, but a preventative, operationally supportive approach. I think when the residents are connected, the issues surface earlier, communication improves in all fronts. Conflicts are also less likely to escalate, and this directly supports the housing stability and the day-to-day life to everybody, which matter for residents and for staff. Next, please. I would like to say that this has been very much a learn as we go process, and we've tried approaches including resident surveys and feedback tools to guide engagement. Also partnerships that support aging in place through safety, tech, information sessions were very important. Food security initiatives across seasons, and community events that build familiarity and trust. Next, please. So in practice, what does being an enabling host looks like? It's basically to ensuring common spaces are clean, accessible, and bookable, aligning site staff and partners around our shared goals, supporting resident leadership while avoiding favoritism as possible, reducing also friction for partners through clear processes, calendars, and points of contact. So I believe like the small things, the operational decisions are the ones that make the big differences. Next, please. But as I say, it has been a learning process, and there are things working and things that are not working. So from my experience, what helps the most is the staff alignment. Make sure that all staff are aligned with our goals, the leadership support, clear expectations, and trusted partners. And what is not working, as Jamie said, is believing that the one-size-fits-all model, having unclear roles, and relying too heavily on small group of residents leaders. So as he mentioned as well, flexibility and clarity is very important. Next, please. So regarding the benefits we observed, there are benefits for residents and also for New Chelsea. So for the residents, we've seen stronger sense of belonging, trust among neighbors and staff, and confidence, which leads to empowerment. And for New Chelsea, we see earlier issue detection, clearer communication, fewer escalations, and stronger relationships with partners, and help them understand our housing realities. So these benefits support the community well-being and the operation and stability. Next, please. Well, here I will show you some pictures where the images speak. These are examples of what enabling host relationship looks like. So as you can see, they reflect connection, familiarity, and shared ownership of the space, not just the programming. So here you can see community engagement and programs, Some of our partners also were Brightside, Pleasant Neighborhood House, Strathcona Policing Center, Hallway House, Langaran Raycam, Next Club for the young people, Mini Village. We also have some safety and awareness initiatives with Metro Vancouver Crime Stoppers, introducing the RAHA program. Also, we work with SFU, the Urban Studies and Gerontology departments, digital literacy and resident support, also with Infinitive Way Foundation, food security and holiday support with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank, some lunch and distributions, winter distributions from lunch for the Vancouver Police Foundation, and holiday events. Next, please. So finally, if I need to summarize it, I will think that enabling host is the one that creates clear conditions, works in strong partnership, stays aligned with operations, and learns continuously. I think being an enabling host is just to be the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I like how you say being enabling host is just being the bridge. That is a serious understatement of what you're doing, which is very, very clear to me. And not the common practice across the housing sector. But one that we hope will become more and more common over time as all of us share the stories of what we're doing and what's working. So I'm going to take a little bit of time with the panelists to launch a few of my own questions, and then we will flip it over to participants for your questions. So Tara is closely watching the chat, so that is where we would like you to put your questions for our presenters. And if you like someone's question, give that question a thumbs up so that we can see that it's something that more than one person wants asked. That'll help us. And we are definitely not going to get to everybody's questions. So please remember that the breakout rooms, which will start at 12:20, are a space for that conversation to continue. So I can see we're getting everybody on the screen here. And we also have Sherry Crane, who's going to join us to comment alongside Jamie from Brightside because they play different roles in the organization. And Sherry has been with Brightside for quite a number of years now. So I am going to launch with a quite a specific question first for Jamie. Jamie, you talked about the TAPS program, and it sounded to me like you were saying that in some cases you were inviting non-residents into the buildings to participate. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, with the TAPS program, the TAPS program actually runs at it runs at the Brightside site, but also I think someone had put it in the chat as well. So correct or forgive me for not including that, but it's funded by the Ministry of Health and managed by the United Way BC. So then Little Mountain Neighborhood House does it in quite a few sites, but they also invite, open it to the public. So if, let's say, there was someone going to one at the Brightside site, maybe on Wednesdays and Fridays, they could also go to one at Site B Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So it really allows participants to be able to take part for multiple days, but also just if there are people in the community who would benefit from this program, or people who live in the neighborhood who want to meet neighbors in that said building, they're able to join. Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool.
Mhm.
I'm curious, I'm not sure where Rebecca has gone, but hopefully Rebecca, you're still on the call. And if you are, has New Chelsea done this in any buildings, invited non-residents into programming in a New Chelsea space?
I'll just interject really quick, Michelle.
Yeah.
Rebecca had some tech issues and she'll come back online.
All right, all right. Okay, great. We can hold that question. So the issue of space then is one that has come up for all presenters, right? Talking about how you're utilizing space, that programming is helping to better utilize existing spaces that might not have been very robustly used. And in fact, even invite members of the public in some cases to, to benefit from that space. I'm curious to all of you, jump in as you'd like, how you're working within buildings that don't have a common space or a shared space. or if that's even not possible in your model.
Mm,
Catherine Bruner, I see you nodding your head. Do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So for the buildings that we're piloting in Toronto, we have had a requirement to have a common space because we really wanted to look and see from a group programming and health prevention perspective how we could support the use of those areas. But for the older adults who have started their own aging in place initiative through using some of our suite of resources, not all of those communities have access to a common space, and they're doing some really creative things like using lobbies and entryways or outdoor areas, or sometimes they'll also create a network with another building. So maybe there's a nearby, for example, condominium that does have space, and they'll actually work together to form a cluster or what's called a horizontal NORC to be able to use the buildings where there is a common area. But of course, that might mean that you're working with those different housing providers to make sure that there's permission for outsiders to come in and use those spaces. And then, of course, a lot of different people really look to see those neutral spaces in the community, in the larger neighborhood, libraries, community centers, and how we can better use those third-party spaces.
Mm-hmm. That's
No,
great.
Michelle, I'm going to jump right on that.
Please do.
Thinking about, those third spaces. So we have one actually Oasis community in Toronto that uses a decommissioned school, for instance. And so that's been quite effective. And just thinking about, again, NORCs don't always have to be apartment buildings. They're really just a way to talk about high proportion of older people. So it could be neighborhoods as well. So just thinking about, again, community spaces. I was over in Manchester who do incredible work around aging, and they have what they really focus on more like neighborhood-based, place-based services. They've worked with churches, decommissioned also community spaces in parks. So again, I think creativity and not just to think it's apartment buildings only, but thinking about housing and where people live broadly and spaces and places that we could use.
Yeah, that's great. Sherry, I know that you have kind of really contended over the years with like, your portfolio of buildings all very different. And how have you kind of thought about that in terms of,
Mm,
the buildings that do have space, the buildings that don't?
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the truth of it truly is we start with the maybe the easiest place to start, right? When you're trying to create these things. And so with Oasis, for example, we did tour a large number of our buildings, figured out which would be the most enabling space, place to cook, large enough. But I would also say we did a connect and prepare session a few years ago in a building where we did it in the lobby because there's a lobby and a laundry room, and the lobby was the bigger space, and it worked for people, but it would be limiting, right? It happens to be a small building. So I think, we don't, for other people thinking about doing this, I think you want to start in a way that you can be as successful as you can, and that's going to be the buildings where it has a nice space, and then we try to be creative around these other things with the examples that other people have given. And I would also say that for Brightside, we've been in a really busy time the last couple of years opening up some new buildings, and these there's a lot of intentionality around building new spaces, meaning where taps it takes place. For example, you can see that's a really nice big room, and it's made for this. And I think to look forward, you want to be creating the spaces as well, as opposed to just trying to find the space in the buildings you have.
That's great.
If I could
Okay,
just add something
oh
to
yes,
what,
please do.
yeah, to what Sherry, I forgot to mention, but for what Sherry just said with one of our newer buildings, where TAPS runs and the space is almost made for it per se, we try to, picking that building, we have like 4 or 5 surrounding Brightside buildings, so which don't have they're older buildings, they might not have a kitchen set up and whatnot, so we invite residents from surrounding buildings to join that building. Not as accessible as being in your own building, but still within walking distance to join.
Yeah, that's great. Sherry, I remember years ago, I don't know if it was you who coined this or somebody else, but this idea of a portfolio approach. So like thinking less about your buildings as these only ever to be their own little islands, and think about them kind of as a collection. I'm going to go to a broad question next before turning it over to our participants, and I'll launch it first at you, Rebecca, since you were out of the panel for a little bit there. So I'm glad you're back. I'm going to go with a really broad question, which is, and I'll ask anybody to jump in after Rebecca, But do you feel like New Chelsea is accomplishing everything you'd like to be accomplishing now, or are there areas or ways in which you'd like to deepen or expand the work?
Thank you, Michelle, and my apologies. I had some tech issues. Yeah, well, I think it's just the beginning of what we want to do. Something very important for me, because it's been just a little bit more than a year that I'm with New Chelsea as the coordinator, is to know the properties, to know who our tenants are, because we have the 23 properties, 8 of them are just for seniors, and the other ones we are housing families, people with disabilities, and it's a very mixed population. So I needed to know our properties, the residents, and also our capacity from the staff. So from there is where I'm creating a diagnosis and just go and look for what we need, because I've been offered some things that won't really fit to certain properties. And as I say, this model of one fits all is not working. So I need to address it to each of the properties and know which are the resources that we have on hand, but regarding of the needs we have. So it's not helpful if it's not if we don't need it, right?
Yeah.
So we are just at the beginning of that, and looking for strong partnerships and learning on the way our capacity as with the staff.
That's great. Thanks. How about the rest of you? Are you where you want to be in this work, or is there a grand vision that's more expansive?
I can jump in. I think we always want to do more. We believe in, we believe in this, and we've been doing it for a while. As the presentations show, capacity is often the barrier. Capacity big C, little c. So we are also historically we've been largely older adult seniors focused, and with our new our redevelopments that we've done, we are having a lot more intergenerational tenants. So the programming that we're kind of attached to is often seniors based. So we're kind of looking for other opportunities to engage with everybody and bring those people into the groups. Like, for example, at the TAPS program, we have a lot of young people in that building. We say, this program's running in there. If you're interested in volunteering or joining, you could always ask, so it's not exclusive, even though it is a seniors program. So I would say that for us, we want to do more. We're kind of at the threshold of not being able to do more right now. And because Jamie is out there moving and shaking. And so that, I guess, would be the main thing. And the other thing is, there's a question that always gets asked, is have you seen a really marked difference in the relationships between Brightside staff and residents? I don't know if we could really say that. Maybe it's because we have grown a lot in the last couple of years, so we keep getting new people who, so it's hard to say. If we had just the same amount of people, we could test it a little bit better. But so that part, and we also don't have building managers on site. So I think that's as well. Maybe when you have a more dedicated person and as a building manager or whatever they're called in your organization, they might be able to see that a little more closely. But Jamie and I might be the only ones that have that relationship with people in this way. So that would be a way I'd like us to grow, is to be able to really pinpoint that a little better.
Right. So kind of going back to capacity, and for everybody talked about the secret sauce being coordinators, right? And not just
100%.
coordinators with the kind of delivery partner organizations, like the Oasis model, like the Nork Innovation Center model, but also on the housing operator side, right?
We wouldn't do hardly any
Jamie
of this.
is
Yeah,
running as fast as they can,
that's
and is
right.
one person with 28 buildings.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
So capacity is the limiter to expansion and deepening, I think, in all of these cases, I'm assuming. Rebecca, yes, and then Catherine.
Yeah, so also I just want to add that is about the staff capacity, but very important, as we all know, is the funding. Sometimes there are a lot of programs that we would like to have in place, but we need to prioritize some of the things. And also sometimes we have some assistance at some, for example, let's say Mount Pleasant neighborhood house, but I have some properties that are a little bit farther. So due to the location, we cannot continue or share that programs to some of the properties where I really need them because of the location and the funding.
Yeah, thanks. So, Catherine, we'll let you have the last comment before we turn it over to participant questions.
Yeah, I was just going to echo exactly. I think in terms of capacity, it's actually about funding, sadly, as it all comes down to. And just, thinking about how we can coalesce and pull on the same rope in terms of thinking about, how do place-based programs that are built around social connections, what are the positive outcomes they have for health? Because, you said it exactly. The WHO has their new mandate, but their call to action and how I see it as seeing loneliness as a health issue. So, if we can start to evaluate and get big data to show the health system that it's not a health intervention, and I see that, yes, it might connect to health, but actually just dealing with social connections is the intervention. And I don't think we can forget how powerful that is. And so we need to think about what are the long-term health outcomes and leverage these social programs in housing with partners to actually get funded as core health initiatives.
Well, I think that's what's known as a mic drop and a perfect segue to participant questions. So Tara, have you got a first one lined up?
I do. So there are actually two questions from Brooke with a lot of thumbs up. The first question is, how many of these programs support intergenerational connection? Catherine?
Oh, I think one of the benefits of working in naturally occurring retirement communities is they are just residential buildings that happen to have a density of older adults. So they are inherently intergenerational. And even though you may be focusing on an older adult population, when you do support social connectedness and more neighborliness between residents in the building, that benefits everyone. And a lot of the different types of programs or resources or services that come in are valuable for any age in the building. And there's all kinds of wonderful examples of ways that these mutual care can support different cohorts in the building. So we've got one Newark community where there's older adults who are doing crafting afternoons where younger kids come, and it's giving some time for the busy parents in that building. And so I think you can design with intergenerational benefits in mind, even if you are sort of gearing with a lens for supporting older adults.
That's
I
great.
just want to put a plug in too, Michelle. I caution, like we initially started thinking 65. But we have changed our perspective. We don't actually even necessarily have an age limit for Oasis. We say they're programs designed for older people, but we don't now actually say 65 or anything like that. We say, anyone who wants to join in the building is welcome. And particularly we've noticed over time that in social housing buildings, 65 is way too late if we want to think about health for like long-term health prevention. And so, 50 is looks different when you've lived and had adversity for many years. So again, really trying to make it all inclusive and not even like talk a little bit about intergenerational, but really just see this as a program for social connections for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and I know, Catherine, when we talk, sometimes we talk about, even as people think about older adults, that's multiple generations, right? A 65-year-old has a very different life, very different needs than a 90-year-old. These are different. There are multiple generations even within, our current, population of older adults. And then, of course, we can be more expansive in what intergenerational looks like, building by building. Yeah. All right, Tara, let's line up the next one.
Yeah, the next question I think could best be answered by Sherry and Rebecca, but anyone can, of course, pop in. But it's how can programs maintain connections with building managers when that's a role that often sees a lot of turnover?
Well, I'll just start by saying we don't have building managers, so it doesn't happen at Brightside that way. Really, it's Jamie 90% of the time right now. Me, I sneak in there where I can and need to facilitate our partnerships. I think that is, I can see how having the on-site person would be definitely a benefit to moving some of these things forward, but we're proof you don't need one to make it happen. So Rebecca, I'll let you answer the actual question about how.
Thank you, Sherry. Well, in New Chelsea's case, we have site managers, not in all the properties because they share, depending on the amount of units at each property, they share portfolios. But basically, the contact is by me. So I'm the bridge to all these programs. And depending, as I say, on what we have and the needs we have, I try to address it to different properties. And I just get in touch with the managers just to coordinate with the rooms that they are clean. If we need some furniture like chairs, setting up tables, the gardens, things like that, I'm the one coordinating with them or with the regional site managers.
I'll
Yeah,
add
so
one. Oh, sorry, Michelle. I'll add one more thing. We do have our property services team, our maintenance team, who we do obviously call on for things like that, and they're fantastic. But it's a bit more ad hoc. Like, could you do this one thing, as opposed to the community partners being the ones to communicate with them directly.
So I think this goes back to the secret sauce, right? And Jamie, you talked about one of the most important things with programming and programming partnerships is that consistency and kind of longevity, right? So, on the housing operator side, if there isn't a coordinator in a role like Jamie's or Rebecca's, it's very, very difficult to be that enabling host because you keep losing connections with all of your partners. You can have more turnover at the building manager level or at the property services level. I mean, ideally, as a housing operator, you don't want a ton of turnover, but it happens. But so having that consistent coordinator kind of on both sides is really key. And then of course funding, we know that a lot of the nonprofits we work with that are trying to deliver these partners are really, really challenged with insufficient episodic funding. So their staff are often turning over really quickly, which is challenging. Rebecca, and then we'll go to next question.
Sorry, I just want to add that in my case, I think it was an asset that before this role, I was working at operations. So I was able to know the properties like in deep and the staff. So I know if something is not working, I know where to go because I know the other channels. I've been there for a couple of years. So that makes my job easier just to know the back part of the operations.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tara.
Yeah, people are curious to know where funding comes for these projects and also if there's acknowledgement from the private sector, like developers, in the value of this work.
Okay, two-barreled question. So first part, where does the funding come from? Second part, is there an acknowledgement of the value of this work from, was it the private sector, Tara?
Private sector, yes.
From the private sector. Okay. Catherine.
Yeah, I can say that from
Donnelly.
the Oasis, for the most part, we've had support from different short-term grant soft funding, unfortunately, even though it's been going on for all these years, we've been actively getting and maintaining different types of money. One of our biggest supporters, though, was Walton's Trust, and I just a huge shout out for believing in naturally occurring retirement communities as a solution. And so they've been supporting Oasis, but we've had as equal amounts from different grants, from national, from provincial, from regional, and we've only had the one, as I mentioned, that's been maintained consistently from a health authority actually here in Kingston.
And so, Catherine, with the exception of Walton's Trust, has it largely for the individual kind of partners on the ground? So is it largely coming from kind of health sector, health systems? Is that where it's largely
Yeah,
coming
both.
from?
Yeah, so like the ESDC, we received some funds from ESDC, but we've also received from health sectors, but also research grants also, to help the implementation. And then our Oasis groups now are actually individually applying to like more hyper regional local grants, and we're supporting that as well. So I know Medicine Hat just received some funds from Alberta. So again, kind of leveraging successes of each group to help then support other local funding. But
Right.
everyone's different right now. We're just trying to help everyone keep going.
Right. So there's a type of funding that helps the kind of the national kind of umbrella organization, and then all of your different partners are hustling for their local sources to
Hustling.
actually do the programs in actual
Yeah.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else on funding and or recognition from private sector? Catherine Bruner.
Yeah, similarly, the Nork Innovation Center's work is funded through research grants and foundations. But we are midway through an implementation research project to be able to design a model that could be replicated by others. So part of our hope for long-term sustainability is to develop a model that other agencies and organizations can adopt. But I think to everyone's point, working with partners has been something that's come up again and again. And I think the value of those different agencies that become these partners that can offer programs and services is really essential for this type of work. So I think to your earlier point around having more of a national strategy that supports funding these types of programs and that can also create more of a not just funding, but also measuring the impacts of these types of programs helps us all to build this traction. So there's real system transformation that recognizes the community and place-based services as being important.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I can speak for us. I think it's about us being intentional to the work. So we, in our operating budget, make room for a community engagement coordinator. And and we're fortunate to be able to do that. I don't know that every housing provider can do that. It's a stretch. Could we do other things that are directly related to housing, with that? Of course, but we see the benefit, right, to making sure that we have this dedicated position. We did get for a few years some money from the Neighbour Collective group to help
Through other
facilitate.
funders.
Through,
So
I was
like
going to say
Oasis, we're looking for the
through
big group, the
that's
grants,
right.
and then
Through your grants that you've been able to get helped to fund us when we first started. But at this point, we it's important, so we just keep making room for it in the budget.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I see from kind of my lens, kind of talking to lots of different groups around this, is that is that for the community housing sector, there's a strong kind of mission alignment around these ideas, and they're grasped easily, but not resourced easily. So the why and whether to do it is an easy sell. That the how to do it is tougher because not every nonprofit housing organization is at the scale where they can, sustain a full-time, coordinator like Jamie or like Rebecca. So that's a good segue into is the recognition in the private sector. Catherine, I know you've got your paper that you just did. Can you speak to the value that your private sector landlords are seeing in this?
And Oasis started in a private sector land like building, and we get asked more than we can offer the program. So we are looking, if we have to be brutally honest, at sustainability from these private landlords about, what might that look like to provide some sort of funding, because there is substantial benefits that they've acknowledged to us, particularly the private landlords, actually, because you'll see it. One of the quote was that was a way of selling the building. And what happens is that when people get tours in most of the buildings that are private, they actually have an Oasis pamphlet and will tour people around, show people the common space. And there's been times where the program's been running and, the person looking and touring is welcomed into the group right away. So, there's huge benefits I can see from the housing partners too.
Yeah, that's great. I know that we are crunched for time if we want to stick to our agenda. So, Tara, is there a really quick question? And then people can save their questions for the breakout groups?
There is a question specifically for Rebecca that's come up twice now, which is asking if you could share the goals that align staff and partners in being an enabling host that you shared in your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Tara. Well, first of all, I would like to say that when I started this position, I had a meeting with the operations team where I shared our mission, vision, and values, and our strategic plan. So for all to know not to forget why we are here, what we are looking at. So after that, I shared some statistics about isolation and food insecurity and how connection brightens everything. So this is a type of goals I'm sharing with them. like as I say in my benefit slide, like show them, like proving if we have more connections, then there will be less escalations. There we will detect problems earlier. So just it was like a quick reminder of who we are as society, and the mission and the vision and the values. That was all.
That's great. And Rebecca, I did when you were sharing that particular slide, I was like, wow, that is so well crystallized. So I think the question there is literally, can we get that slide? So the answer to that is that all of the presentations have been recorded. They will be shared. We will also share all the presenters' slides and links to their resources. So we've been sharing throughout in the chat. All of that will be in a wrap-up post very soon. I'm not going to say how many work days, but not very many. Let's put it that way. So, Tara and Ryan, thank you for finding the questions for us for the segment and for keeping me on time because this is juicy and interesting, and I'm really glad that for those who can stay, we've got a little bit more time to do so. So, Tara, you'll let me know if I'm missing anything, but I think this is the point where we give everybody a little 4 minute, let's say, bio break. So, go run to the washroom, grab a cup of coffee, and then come back at 12:20 when we will open up the breakout rooms. Now, some of you have been assigned to breakout rooms so that you don't all end up with your own colleagues. But otherwise, you're going to be randomly assorted, and wherever you go, it will be an interesting conversation. So, for those of you who have to take off now, thank you so much for joining us. And if you can, please stay. Okay, we'll see you at 12:20. All right, we've got the hardcores left. All right. There's always like there's this funnel with webinars, right? There's the number of people who register, and there's the number of people who show up, and there's number of people who are still on the call at the very end. So you guys are the hardcores. All right. Ryan, can you tell me, is everybody back in the room or do we need to wait for anybody? I'm assuming we're all back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Looks like everybody's
Awesome.
back now.
Okay. Well, I asked Ryan to give us a little bit more time in the breakout rooms because as the facilitator of mine, I was like, oh, this is going real fast. And you don't need a lot of time to wrap up. So I thought I would maybe put one or two of our facilitators on the spot to just maybe share some key insights. So I'm going to go with our co-host organization, Laura Katawaki. Just
Yeah, well,
choosing you, I'm volunteering.
I wrote down some notes just in
Great.
case this would
Great.
happen. So, yeah, two of the key, really interesting takeaways that I thought we heard in our conversation was one about the need to take the temperature of the building in terms of when you're starting to interact and build a relationship or program in a new building and how each of them is unique. So I really liked that takeaway. And then also the idea of going slow to go fast, which was that there's all that initial work that you need to put in to start building the relationship, to gain the trust. And then eventually, once you've done all those steps, you'll be able to start going quite quickly and efficiently, but you need to start off with those slower pieces. So I think those were two really great insights, and there were many more in our group because we had a really amazing conversation.
Okay, that's fantastic. Oh, and thank you for being so succinct. Okay, I'm going to flip to Dory next. So Dory is with Vancouver Coastal Health. So we'll go from the United Way perspective to Vancouver Coastal Health. And what did you hear that was really
Right, right.
interesting from your group?
Thanks, Michelle. We also had a great conversation and a diverse group of folks. Some of the key takeaways would be that a similar model or like a framework can work for a lot of like within a lot of housing operators, whether it be BC Housing, New Chelsea, Brightside, and a lot of folks are having similar challenges. The main one being of not knowing where to start. And if, let's say, a landlord is ready, how can they partner with the right groups and organizations? Then we ended up with some final thoughts, and that co-creation with residents is super important and critical. And also, food is a major factor to get buy-in as well.
Yes, always food, right? That's such a biggie, such a biggie. Okay, I'm gonna volunteer Anthony Cooper-Schmidt. So you have a long history back in working in seniors organizations, but then also more recently from municipalities. What really stood out from your group as key insights?
We had a great conversation, Michelle. So I'll try to keep this brief so we hear from others. But we talked a little bit about sort of the need for that broader strategy to resource this work to actually, make sure that we have this critical mass and are reaching the most possible people in this effective way. One of the things that stood out for me, and I'm going to give full credit to Veronica from our group from Hollyburn. We had what I thought was a very interesting metaphor came out of this work. We had a bit of a dialogue about, so we had housing operators and service providers both in the room, and everyone was pretty committed. But we had a bit of a dialogue about what that, depending on what that looks and where different buildings and their residents are. So, for example, if we're working with somebody who the first priority is to get or keep someone housed, and then when you achieve that, how do you then work up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you will, to be thinking more of that social connection? And she used this wonderful metaphor of a Christmas tree that we sort of ran with a little bit, and but not having the social connection just be a single ornament that hangs on that tree. But I think where we landed with Catherine as well on that was that that's actually the stand or the foundation for all of that work. So take that as you will. I don't know if that resonates for
Oh,
you
I
or
like
not,
it. I
but
feel an infographic coming.
I will leave that to you about how seasonal you want that to be. But I think I'll stop there for now. But thank you very much to Group 4.
That's fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna let us go 2 minutes overtime to get one last insight all the way over from Ontario from Sue Lance, and then we'll do a quick thank you and be on our way.
Okay, I'll be quick. We had a very lively discussion. I would say we were really hovering around the partnerships, how to start the engine in communities and buildings, where to, there were some great comments by some of the participants about the voice of the people and sharing when they have been successful in starting something in their building or community, having them lead the presentations to funders or municipalities or to other tenants in other buildings or other communities. The peer dynamic of that infectiousness of, hey, this works, was one thing that came out. The other was some creative funding sources like Entre Nous, Connecting Neighbors, Vancouver Foundation, neighborhood grants, like small micro grants, getting people started. How do we know about those, learn about those, and facilitate the knowledge of that. And I would say the only last theme I would want to highlight, there were so many, but the value of arts-based initiatives as well. We talked about emergency preparedness and how that's a great one for landlords to be involved in, but arts-based food, arts-based music, painting, creative endeavors do bring people together. So, I mean, I'll leave it there. There was a lot more said, but
that's great. Thanks so much, Sue. That's great. Okay, so I know we all have busy days, so we'll let everybody go. But just as a final thanks to all of our presenters, to our facilitators, our experts, to United Way for being our co-host, and their seniors working group. Thanks for all of you participants who are still here at the end. You will get asked to take a quick online survey. It really helps. Please take a few minutes to do it if you would. My contact info is here. And I wanted to acknowledge to Walton's Trust. Catherine Donnelly mentioned Walton's in the context of Oasis. They're not a funder that seeks a lot of public acknowledgement, but they have been really, really key in supporting organizations like ours to do this kind of thing, to make sense of the why we need to do this, the how to do it, what works, what doesn't, to do the peer learning and to be doing the sense making and thinking about kind of policy change and systems change. So a big shout out to Sandy Pelly and her team at Walton's Trust for that. And a very good day to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful day and wonderful week. And I hope that you reach out if you want to keep chatting. Okay.